So let's set up the project for the Xcode project. So when you open Xcode, you'll see here the welcome screen, and we'll start by creating a new Xcode project. So click on that. Xcode opens the new project template, as you can see in front of you. And there are 4 types of projects you can create. We are always creating iOS for this purpose. Within iOS, you can create an application or you can create a library. We are always creating an application. So there are 5 different templates that Xcode offers you to set up a new project. We will always be using the single view application template, and this template creates an app with one single screen and the associated custom controller, and doesn't do anything. It's empty, and then from there we can build on our project. So we say single view application. Then next, it will ask you to provide some information about your project, including the name. So you use your last name, and you don't really have to do that. That's my naming convention for my class, but if you are in an organization, there's usually a naming convention. If you are building this for yourself, you may want to have some naming conventions related to the purpose and categories of your project. So I will say here Saeed underscore, and then what this project is about. So this is a project to create a color palette. And then organization name, and then the identifier. The identifier is only important if you're going to have an account with the Apple developer account. You want this, whatever identifier you set up in your account and what you have here, they need to match. The language for your controller, this is the programming language that will be used to write instructions to the controller. iOS offers 2 possibilities: Objective-C, that's the original language, and then Swift, that is the new language that starts. So we are using Swift. And then in the devices, we'll choose iPhone, and we'll uncheck these. As you get more comfortable, or if you're familiar with unit test or UI test, you can include that and play with it, but for us, we'll just uncheck all of those. Then next, it will ask you where you want to save this project. This is important step so that when you move your project, you can take it somewhere else. So I will say here, I will save it in this folder. If you have your own computer, then you organize your folder somewhere. If you're on a public computer, perhaps go to the documents or a temporary folder and create a folder with your last name, then put your project in there. That folder that gets created here is your project. So if you want to transfer your project to another computer, you will compress that folder and move it with you. And then you say create, we'll unchecking the get repository, and then say create. So that creates a new project for you. And as we said before, Xcode has 3 main areas. The Project Explorer areas, this is where you find all your files, and there are different sections here based, or inspectors based on different things related to the files. For instance, the issues, that's where you find all the warnings and compilation errors. The right side is the utility area. That's where they give you access to what the iOS platform can provide you with respect to whatever you are selecting. So here we are selecting the configuration of the project, so we see information related to the project configuration. In the middle is what's called the editing area, and whatever, depending on the file you select from here, this area will change. So here we are at the configuration. So important parts of the configuration, if you are building your project and you are a member of the Apple developer account, you want to set up your team here. Depending on what iOS you want your app to be able to work on, you select that from the deployment target. These are the different versions of iOS. So if you select an earlier one, it means your app will work. This is the minimum version of iOS on a device that the app can work on. The app is for the phone, and then the main interface here reference which one of those files is the first interface for your app. So the single view application has a storyboard file, which is a user interface or an interface builder file. So we say here the main, which is this name here. Device orientations that are that would work for this app. And then if you have an app icon, you can set it up here. And then the other one that's important is the launch screen. So Xcode give you the opportunity to create a launch screen. So there's another storyboard file called launch screen. This file is for you to set up what the launch screen for the app would look like. This would be credits, icon, or things like that. Because this is educational video, I'm not gonna do launch screen. So I'm gonna say I want the launch screen to be the same as my main interface. So I will change from launch screen.storyboard to the file main.storyboard. We're not going to be doing this here, but if you are using a library other than the iOS default libraries, then you want to load them in here. There are so many other configurations. So if you're familiar with configuration and device, it's very powerful. It can give you control over the actual steps to configure the app. Once we configured the app and the project is set up for us, quick thing on the user in the storyboard that we want to configure as well. So if you click on the storyboard, it by default opens the document outliner area, which has this icon here in the lower. So click on that to hide the document outliner, so we have some more room with our storyboard. The Xcode opens the interface builder by default with what's something called the size classes. The size classes allow you to manage the layout for your project for any screen size. We're going to talk about that in later modules. For now, just to avoid the complexity, I want to disable the size classes and only select an iPhone size. So if you go to the file inspector here, you'll see the icon that says use size classes. So we'll uncheck, not the checkbox, so I will uncheck that checkbox and say no, we don't want to use the size classes. So since you're now limiting the screens, it will ask you which one you want to keep. So we'll say the iPhone, so disable the size classes. So now we're building for a specific size. Now this size is the iPhone 5S size. As you probably know, now we have iPhone 6 and 6S, which are bigger sizes than that. So I just want you to know, once you disable the size classes, you are working with the iPhone 5S size. For our purpose, that's okay. But when you, if you want to build a more generic app, then you can use the size classes. The other part for the setup is the scheme. So here you can set up when you run the app, where do you want to run it? With Xcode 9, you're able to connect your device. So if you connect your device to your Xcode, you'll be able to see it here. Or choose a simulator from the built-in simulator. So I'm going to choose the iPhone 5S simulator, so that the simulator is showing the size exactly what I am building for. So now that we did all of this, we can test our project setup by running the app, and if we're successful, we should get the simulator to launch and the app to open in as an empty app. So when the app opens in the simulator, if this is your first time, it will load as if it's shut down and loading. If the size is coming too large, if you go to Window, Scale, you're able to scale down the screen, the simulator screen. So here I'm scaling it to 50% so that it fits nicely within my computer screen. So that's that. In the simulator also you have some options. So you have the hardware, and this gives you ability to simulate some of the things that you do on your phone, like clicking the home button, locking, rebooting, and different items like that. It takes some time to load, and I have observed for some students it could take a little bit more time depending on the memory of the computer you are working with. The latest version of Xcode I think you'll need some good memory in there. If you have like a 1 GB of memory, you may experience some delays. It will come up at the end, but it may be slower than you expect. So be patient with it. If it goes like too long and you're impatient, you can click on the stop button, which will stop the simulator. Then you click the run and it will run it again. Sometimes that helps break, if there's a process that is hanging, it helps break that and enable you to launch one more time. So that's it for project setup, and that completes iteration number 1. So we go ahead and move on to iteration number 2.